Monday, October 12th meeting of the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell. I'm glad you all came out here for a rainy day, and we'll hope to have a expedited meeting and get you home for dancing in the stars or whatever else you have for the rest of the evening. I would like to invite two of my good friends to come forward and lead us in the pledge, Wendell Willard and Brandon Beach. And gentlemen, if we'd all face the flag, come forward, Wendell. Come forward, Brandon. That's to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brandon, if you'd come to the microphone, we'd like to thank you for all that you're doing for the city of Roswell. Brandon right now is working on a grant, a $50,000 grant to beautify the gateway to Roswell, the 400 Holcomb Bridge Road interchange, in his capacity as he's on the DOT board. He's also our Chamber of Commerce Executive Director. And there's something else we're thanking you for. Midtown. For 5 years, we tried to get approval to move forward with an ARC grant of over $2 million and city funding for another $1 million to beautify that stretch of Roswell. And I think it would be another 5 years if it were not for the help of Brandon Beach. So, Brandon, you want to tell us how you got that done?
Just Councilman DiPolito called me, and we made some phone calls, and we went and met with Gerald Ross, and we got the ball rolling and got it moving. So thank you for bringing it to my attention, and we got it moving. So, and I'm glad it's going to be a great project. I also, while I have the microphone, would like to thank y'all for your effort in the West Side Parkway that just opened a couple weeks ago, and we'll finish that other section right there by the Land Rover dealership. Probably it has to be done by April 1st, but they're 2 months ahead of schedule. If weather permits, we should open that probably end of January. But that West Side Parkway, that was a perfect example of a collaborative effort between City of Alpharetta, City of Roswell, the DOT, the federal government with Tom Price getting us some federal money, and the North Fulton CID and the Chamber, everybody working together. And so I want to thank you and the council for putting up, I think y'all put up $600,000, and we really appreciate that.
Well, we put up $600,000, and we are committed to help Alpharetta out with another $200,000. What's our additional commitment? We haven't approved it. We're going to approve it. We're going to step up to the plate, and there was an additional issue that we stepped up to help Alpharetta along with the CID out with some unanticipated potential costs for condemnation, and it's been our pleasure to work on that. And Brandon made light of this. He just made a few phone calls, but if he weren't on the DOT board and he weren't firmly in our corner, we'd still be waiting on that grant. So, Brandon,
well, thank you very much. And whatever
let's have a hand for Brandon.
Whatever I can do to help. Thank you.
And the next person I'd like to recognize is Representative Wendell Willard. Wendell, if you would come forward. Well, let me get the motion on the table, and then we'll call you up. We have a resolution to support legislative action that Wendell is going to be dropping this year. Wendell is state representative for a good bit of Roswell and Sandy Springs. Wendell is also the city attorney for Sandy Springs, and I will tell you, Wendell is the midwife, or the I wouldn't say the mother or the father, but the midwife of all of the new cities, because it was Wendell's legislation that created Sandy Springs and opened the door for Johns Creek and Milton and Dunwoody and Chattahoochee Hills, and so he has birthed a lot of cities, and we appreciate that as a city. Cities. So, David, if you would read the resolution, then Wendell can explain to us what he's doing with it, with this support.
Thank you. This is a resolution to support the efforts of State Representative Wendell Willard in assisting Category 1 dam owners in receiving state funding or low-interest state loans for the repair and or maintenance of such dams. Whereas there exist within the City of Roswell several dams that have been categorized as Category 1 dams under the Georgia Safe Dams Act by the Georgia Environmental Protection Division of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. And whereas some of these dams, as originally designed and built, did not qualify for such status, and whereas state law now requires Category 1 dams to meet heightened criteria for maintenance and repair, which is beyond the practical financial ability of most private dam owners, and whereas the Mayor and Council recognize the need for assistance in the repair and maintenance of such dams, but are prohibited by the state constitution and other state laws from funding private entities for non-charitable purposes, and whereas the state has the ability to provide such assistance, and whereas State Representative Wendell Willard has indicated a willingness to introduce legislation in support of state assistance for repair and maintenance of private Category 1 dams, now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell that the Mayor and Council support the introduction of necessary state legislation to assist in the repair and maintenance of these Category 1 dams.
Do we have a motion? Motion by Councilman Orleans. Do we have a second?
I have a question.
You have a question?
Yes. I just wanted to ask Wendell, have you seen the resolution?
I've just heard it.
Just heard it. Do you understand? I mean, does it fit in with what you were trying to do and what you need to do?
Yes, sir.
Wording and so forth?
I think so.
Okay, just
I'm
wanted
going
to
to
check.
try to give what my impression is what we're going to try to do.
Okay, well, maybe I'll wait and listen to what you're trying to do then, too. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Wendell, why don't you, before we entertain a motion, then if you could explain what you hope to introduce.
Well, I'd like to say I can take credit for this, but I can't. It was a matter brought to me by Council Member Becky Wynn and former Council Member Dave Tolson and Lynn Riley, with the idea that we have not only in Roswell, but I think in other parts of North Fulton as well as the metropolitan area, the what we call Category 1 type dams, which are large dams that a number of which are in problem stages right now as far as either repair or total renovation replacement. And what you generally have, I say, speaking now as a lawyer, I've had over the years issues and litigation involving the problems of dams and lakes and maintenance issues. So trying to get all the people together that have that responsibility to take care of this need is very difficult. One of the difficult parts is to have sufficient funding available, and you can imagine what it's like getting maybe 50, 100 property owners who are saying, I'll take part of my responsibility, but then finding someone who's even willing to loan money under those circumstances is very difficult. So recognizing that we have dams in need of repair, these dams also serve a very vital resource to the communities and the environment, because most times they are detention facilities, major detention facilities, holding large volumes of water from these major rains when we have like today or a few weeks back. So there is a public purpose, I see, to be sure these dams are continued. And the thing we face is the fear and probably expectation, if they don't have the dams repaired, the state comes in and says this is now in a dangerous state where it cannot be continued. You're going to have to breach that dam. And now you have nothing but a big mud hole. So I'm trying to look at a way that we can find assistance from a state level, not giving a handout, but giving an opportunity to a local government working with its citizens that surround that lake, the communities, to have funding borrowed from the state level through most likely what we call the Georgia Environmental Facilities Authority, and I'll talk about that in a second, but have the funds coming as a state bond proceeds where the state borrows the money, say at 3.5%, as opposed to the city or the local community at a substantial higher interest rate. Have those funds then loaned to the city, and then have the city in a position where it can work out a way with the local community, either through covenants, which they can attach to the properties, other type of loan agreements that would permit that community to use those resources with the oversight of the city in doing the repair work or renovations to the dam. And then you'd have the property owners paying back the city. Yes, the city would have its ultimate responsibility to the state, but you'd have security through the local community that is borrowing the funds or has that need to pay back to the city, and the city in turn paying back to the state. So the benefits you have is you got a borrowing resource, you're able to get the funds at a lower rate, and you can accomplish for that community a very vital need. I use the term Georgia Environmental Facilities Authority, which is probably the most likely source. I've done some brief reading of the law and the statutes applying to that authority, and there is within that statute the right to use the funds for dam work. There's also the right to loan the money to cities and other local authorities. So I think we may have already the mechanism in place, but I did speak with the director of that body, a fellow named Mr. Phil Foyle, F-O-I-L, and he was going to, last week when I talked to him about it, further check into it, be sure from his own counsel that this may be something that could be authorized. If it works out, we have the legislation. The main thing we're then looking at is getting the support, not only of the authority, but certainly the governor's office, to see if there can be some amount of money considered for borrowing through the state by appropriating at the next session of the legislature that could be available to cities to apply for this type of program. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're looking to do.
Wendell, we appreciate your sponsoring this bill. Do we have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would like to thank Representative Wendell Willard. We've known each other for quite a while, so I really appreciate you stepping forward on this. But also I want to thank our Fulton County Commissioner, Lynn Riley,
Absolutely.
and our former Councilman, David Tollison, for seeing a need for this type of legislation, and also to Lisa DeCarbo, who is the president of the Martin Sounding Foundation. If it wasn't for their lake and they're bringing us forward what's happening, we probably wouldn't have even known what was going on here. So I want to thank you all. But I also want to apologize to the four of you. If this is the first time I've seen this legislation, this resolution tonight. I just saw it. I walked up on my dais, and here it is. So I know that you all have not had a chance to read it, and I do apologize for that. That is not our policy. And I'm afraid that our mayor, again, is not following policy about how to get resolutions out to our citizens and to our council and to our staff. But that's fine. This is a very general resolution that states that we are we're backing you for what you are doing, which I think is a no-brainer anyway. So, again, I do apologize to the citizens and to the people who are the catalyst of this, that they didn't get to see this resolution. With that said, I do make a motion to approve.
There's a motion by Councilmember Wynn for approval. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the resolution which I have submitted, raise their hands. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Wynn, for that motion.
Enjoy being with you,
Wendell, for
Mayor and
coming.
Council. Always good to see every one of you.
Good to see you. Appreciate all you're doing. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion to approve. Motion by Councilmember Wynn to approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time I'll call upon Councilmember Richard DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item on the community development agenda is CU 09-01, Georgia All-Star Cheerleading at 3000 Northfield Place, Suite 100. Mr. Townsend.
Yes. This applicant is seeking a conditional use for a cheerleading business that gives instruction to various techniques in very specialized area and high level of competition. This is being proposed in an I-1 zoning district. I-1 requires that schools are conditional use. It is proposed within an existing industrial building. There is 2 recommended conditions by staff, which were recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. In summary, staff recommends approval of the conditional use for the All-Star Cheerleaders.
Does the council have any questions for Mr. Strickland? Councilman Eichelhardt.
For Mr. Townsend, this came up in the Planning Commission minutes, and I noticed when we had the space age battery thing, it was the same kind of thing of any expansion or relocation has to be approved and limited to that one location.
Right.
And for the batteries, I could maybe see that makes sense because there could be some danger involved. But unless the cheerleaders are intending to make a lot of noise, I'm not sure that I see any issue with whether they move, stay here, move, expand, whatever. And so the same question that was in the Planning Commission, that isn't it a little bit too much red tape to ask them to come back to us if they just want to move or expand?
I think what staff was dealing with was the concern that we ended up finding them after they moved in. So this is kind of, okay, we want to know where you're going to be next time around, and you're going to tell us first before you go sign a lease to a spot. I mean, yes, it may be additional regulation, but we think it was prudent in knowing, how big they got, or if they move to another place. It is well within the council's purview to not have that as a condition. I mean, it was staff's recommendation, but it can be removed if council sees fit.
And again, I can see some places where that would make sense, but
Right.
I don't think we would care if they were in any zoning category for the most part, and certainly not I-1.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Strickland? Yes, sir.
Mr. Townsend, the second condition, the location of the business, that's redundant with the fact that we're providing this conditional use for a specific location, is it not?
That's fine.
We can eliminate that?
Condition number 2 could be eliminated, correct.
Any other questions? This time we'll hear from the applicant. Is the applicant here tonight?
The gentleman that represented them at the Planning Commission, I don't believe I've seen yet this evening.
Well, we don't necessarily have to have the applicant here. We've had a presentation of the request. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments regarding that request, conditional use? Do we have a motion by council?
Yes, I would like to make a motion understanding that staff's concerns about relocation, but wanting to add some flexibility here, I would like to make a motion that any expansion greater than 25% of the current square footage or relocation of the business within the city of Roswell must be approved by the mayor and council. So I move to approve with that change to the condition number 1 and the elimination of condition number 2.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Yes, sir.
I did have a question then for Mr. DiPolito. That, again, now that we're talking amongst us, I'm not sure I understand the real reason for it in this kind of operation for worrying about where they are if they relocate.
Mr. DiPolito, do you have a response?
I was responding to the staff's concern, and I believe it's a valid one that we'd just like to know where the location of this business is, since it is not a use that we typically allow in I-1. I agree with you. I think there is probably not much opportunity for them to be disruptive. But at the same time, I think we do need to understand what's going on within this particular use.
All right, actually, I have one other question now I think about it, that if they moved somewhere that it was not approved, then obviously they'd have to come back in for a rezoning or some kind of change. If they moved to somewhere where their activity is approved, then it's under zoning, but there's no need for them to come back. But this would say that they do have to come back to us even if they move somewhere that's approved. Is that correct?
That would probably...
Mr. Townsend, yes, if you get the microphone on.
Staff would determine that if it was a conditional use requirement, like in another I-1 location, then it would come back. But if it was a permitted use in a C3 location, it would not come back.
Even based on the wording here?
Even based on the wording.
Okay. It's not that big a deal. It just seems like we're adding one extra thing here. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item on the agenda is RZ09-09 Taylor House Salon, 66 Woodstock Road, land lot 388. Mr. Townsend.
Yes. This is for a request for the Taylor Salon located at 66 Woodstock. This is a rezoning that took place back in 1999. As part of that approval, a condition was placed on the rezoning that limited the use to a hair salon. The applicant is requesting the removal of that condition to allow for other uses which are permitted in the C2 zoning district. The structure contains approximately less than 1,400 square feet. The parking area is gravel in the side and rear of the property, approximately 16 parking spaces. Property on either side of the location are zoned OP. This is down Woodstock Road. There is an investment office as well as an architectural office adjacent to the existing property. This is a front picture location. There were a recommended condition placed on the proposal at the Planning Commission that it be limited to C2 uses and that they would exclude the convenience store for fuel pumps. We think it would be definitely inappropriate at that point. Staff had recommended originally denial, approval of the applicant. The Planning Commission recommended denial during its September 15th hearing. In summary, staff would recommend approval of this application with the condition of the limitation on uses.
Council have any questions? Councilman Orland.
Mr. Townsend, so I'm reading the original conditions included a 5-foot brick sidewalk in the front.
On the original rezoning, a 5-foot brick sidewalk was included, yes.
And to my knowledge, that has never been done?
There has been no brick sidewalks put down Woodstock in this area now. And actually, the city put in concrete sidewalks in the area.
Thank you.
In the past, when we looked at these uses in this area, we talked about trying to, in essence, extend the historic same uses, the same character.
Mm-hmm.
Changes in the building, the architectural requirements, and are we doing that in this case, or is this just? I'm just trying to see if we're keeping with that idea of sort of an extension of the historic district because it's the same character and it's the same sort of adaptive use of buildings.
We are trying, yes, to do that, Mayor. There is no exterior changes to the building.
Well, if they want to make exterior changes to the building, do they have to come back to us?
They would go to the design review board to make any exterior changes.
Would it be possible for them to have to comply with the historic district guidelines versus the, it's a different animal, it's a different review, it's a different sort of a category, and
Right.
I really see this as an extension of the historic district. It's sort of Canton Street turning the corner.
Right.
That's what I would like to see and envision in this area is honestly an extension of the historic district and the same set of rules and not create a whole different little subcategory.
Right.
Is that possible?
It's difficult knowing that it is not within the historic district, has never been included as part of that area under those guidelines. I mean, the scenario is you have two different guidelines and different boards.
What have we done with, I thought we did something similar with the other properties in this area like Ari Combs that were rezoned, these other folks who were allowed non-residential uses in this area.
Probably as part of the rezoning applications as originally handled, those were probably stipulations in which the brick sidewalks were included, the desire or the requirement to, not have paved parking in the front, and those types of issues were put on the rezonings at this time. The request at this time, having that original rezoning, is the salon was the limited use that is only allowed in this location. That's the stipulation that the applicant says is too onerous at this point and she would like some relief from.
And now what does she want to do with it?
Right.
What is the new use?
She wants some retail uses. She wants some office uses. She wants something other than
Thank you for
salons.
answering my questions. Other questions? Councilman Orleans.
I think when this came up last time and when the different items keep coming up, I know I've been pushing for us to look at it as a total area there and either include it in historic district or not include it in historic district and kind of get a consistent zoning instead of doing all this one piece of property by one piece of property by one piece of property. Because I think all of it is OP except one or two spots.
Right.
In fact, actually, I think this is the only one, except up on Canton Street itself. So I still think we need to approach the entire area. And I don't know, you haven't been here that long, Brad, but do you have any recollection of staff talking about it at all and trying to go in this direction?
In researching this particular application, I could definitely see the conversations were taking place. You know, the council was looking to how does this fit into the Canton Street feel, and can we get it to look more similar and dealing with that. You know, we're probably going to have some opportunity related to our comp plan review in dealing with looking at areas and how they are contiguous and how we want them future to develop.
Because we still have some residential in there, and of course even with the historic district, which allows restaurants, you're not sure you want a restaurant right next door to you either.
Right.
So I mean, we need to look at all those issues and get all the people that own the property on Woodstock there involved in it.
Right.
But back to this one now, I think we've got a spot situation we've got to look at on where we're going with it.
Right. And I think that's why the planning commissioners had some concern related to what this application would allow.
I can't disagree with where they were going.
Right.
I didn't see my package, and I didn't look ahead of time of all the C2 uses. Do we have a list that you can put up?
This is the first page of the business uses, as you can see. Accessory uses, adult centers, brokers. The automobile broker doesn't have cars at its site. It's just really like an auto office use. Business services establishments, churches, clinics. This is the one use staff pulled out that said wouldn't be appropriate for the area. Daycare centers, exterminator businesses, financial, real estate businesses, spas, conditional uses. Institutes of residential living, office, personal service establishments, semi-public uses. The restaurant is a permitted use without drive-ins or drive-thrus. Schools of the art. Any of those you want me to go back over?
Do you, the staff have an exact list of ones you will allow or are you recommending to use, or are you just coming in with C2 or not C2?
We recommended the C2 uses excluding the convenience with the pumps.
Only that.
And then there was a control on the personal service definition we have in our code can be pretty broad sometimes, and so we wanted to limit that personal service to the salon use only.
Do we know do we have a specific proposed use for this site, or are they just looking for a general set of uses and trying to lease it?
Just general.
My preference, again, I concur with Councilman Orleans. I'd like to see us look a sort of a bigger look at this piece rather than taking a piece at a time, and I've always advocated that. And I don't want to hold these people up. I'd like to see them get approval tonight so they can move forward, but I also don't want to have it so broad that we shouldn't come back and look at it. So I would like to hear from the applicant to sort of get a limited range of uses and encourage this whole area to try to come into the historic district, because most folks sort of feel it's an extension of it. And I think from an operational standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, from the look and feel of this street, Canton Street has been a very successful project, and I think we could carry that success down this street. And I'd hope we do that. So rather than just sort of taking a big step forward here, I'd like to hear what the proposed uses are, see if we can limit it to that, but encourage this corridor, this set of buildings to come back in and look at, do they want to come into the historic district? Because this is becoming a mixed-use district.
Right.
And it includes residents. It can include residences and restaurants and offices, and we all get along well on Canton Street, and I think they can get along well here. But I just hate creating a whole different little subcategory and little spot zoning here. Other comments from council?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said. I'm a little concerned about this property backing up specifically to the houses on Nancy Trail because of potential noise from restaurants and so forth. So I like the concept of expanding the Canton Street field down the street. I think we're not quite there yet, and we certainly can look at that as part of the comp plan and talk to the property owners about expanding the historic district and finding out from our HBC if they think that's appropriate. Can't do that tonight, obviously, but I think that's a very good idea.
At this time, we'd like to hear from the applicant.
Good evening. I'm Tara Taylor. I am the owner of the business and property at 66 Woodstock. I am basically just wanting to have the condition removed so that I can possibly incorporate some retail, a small amount of retail. I am currently a hair salon, and I have had 9 spots that I rent stations to hairstylists, people in that field. Right now I'm down to 1, and I've been that way for over a year now. I do have another girl starting next month, but in the past year I've realized that I possibly need the opportunity to see if there's something else that I can do just to supplement the income so I can have a successful business there in Roswell. And Mr. Mayor, I remember 10 years ago the zoning and everything that you were just talking about with the extension of Canton Street to that section of Woodstock. I'm about 4 houses down from the corner. And you said you had that vision. And the reason I bought that property was because of the location. I love Roswell. I want to be a part of the historic district. I tell everybody I am because I'm so close. I go ahead and tell them, oh yeah, I'm in the historic district. And we went through Roswell, the Design and Review Board. I won a restoration award through the Historic Society. So I'm very proud to have the business where I am, and I want to see I have the same feel, that charming look of Canton Street, and I think that Woodstock Street, that section, all the way down to the school, pretty much already has that feel. And we are mostly OP. I've talked to the neighbors. I've had lots of people stop me when they see me out. They see the sign and the rezoning, and they've asked me what's going on. And everyone seems very happy and supportive. I haven't had any opposition. So I'm kind of looking for help through the city to see what I can do with the rezoning, to find a zoning or something that can allow me to do just a little something else in the business. I want to remain a salon if I can.
If we added to the uses which you could do, in addition to the hair salon, office professional use and retail use, would that be a broad enough category for you to carry out your plans?
Absolutely. I think that, like I said, I want to remain a salon. That's what I'm set up to do. That's what I would like to do. But I would also like the opportunity to sell an antique. I've talked to local artists who would love to decorate my walls with their artwork.
I think we got it.
So that's really all I'm looking for. Traffic won't change. I'm not wanting to change the structure of the house itself. Everything would remain the same, and so that's pretty much it.
Does the council have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, as far as, I'm just trying to get a better feel for what kind of retail you're trying to do. The art, I think, is pretty easy to understand. When you're talking about retail, are you saying stuff that's ancillary to a salon use, or what's
a little of
what's your
both?
vision
Right now,
there?
I sell some shampoo, things that are related to the hair salon. Very little, but that's a very small amount. I would like to just bump it up a notch. I have antiques that I decorate my shop. People will come in and say, "Where did you find that?" And I'll tell them, "Oh, I went down to this Canton Street Antique Market." Or I would love to be able to sell these items and then replace them. I use them in my shop. Artwork, jewelry. I have a client that makes jewelry, and she would love to be able to sell her pieces, have a stand this big, basically, on a table at my shop. Just something a little bit extra to supplement my income. I'm not wanting to change the entire business.
Your salon is 1,368 feet, is that right? Is that what I remembered?
It's a little bit bigger than that. We added on a little porch on the back that wasn't included. It's more like 1,600 square feet total.
Of that square footage, how much would you envision being retail?
Very small amount.
Maybe a quarter of it, less than that?
Quarter or less.
Quarter or less?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It would be mixed in with the salon, basically. Because I've got chairs, and the house is a house. You walk in, you feel like you're in someone's home. It's not, the walls aren't down. There's rooms and there's stations, and the kitchen has shampoo bowls in it. Mm-hmm. And, I just want to here and there be able to place items that I can sell that's not just shampoo.
Yeah. Where I was going with that is maybe there's a way to limit this where it's a limited amount of retail, so we're really not opening the door to the entire building becoming some retail use that would negatively impact the neighborhoods next door. So that might be a way to solve that.
I understand that, absolutely.
Well, I guess the question I raise is I'm not sure how the retail use in this building, if it was in this building, would negatively affect the residential use. I know that we've got a retail use immediately adjacent to Pug Mabry's house, and never received a complaint from Pug Mabry about the two retail uses next to it. So we've got a Canton Street, which we've got retail and office and restaurants. I'm not proposing restaurants. We've got all these uses which are coexisting. We've got Judge Campbell, Superior Court judge, lives right next door to a restaurant, and they all coexist well. And I hate to go beyond what we need to do. So if there's a concern that retail would be objected to by the residential, I'm not aware that it has been in the past, and so I don't want to try to go beyond what we need to do to accomplish this. And that's why I'm suggesting, rather than trying to parse this out, how much percent is retail and how much percent is salon, they seem to be both adapted uses that are compatible in this neighborhood. We've got retail that backs up, that's side by side residential on Canton Street and backs up to residential on Canton Street. And I've heard complaints about restaurants because of the hours of the operation, but I've never heard any complaints about retail. So I'm just wondering, do we need to limit retail? I'm trying to give you a flexibility of use. And Mr. Dippolito, if you've got some idea on that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. I don't disagree with the concept of the stores on Canton Street, but Ms. Taylor may not own this building forever. She could sell it to somebody, and what we want to make sure is that we don't have a use in there that would have a lot of trucks coming in. One of the problems that we have with retail being adjacent to residential properties is the noise from dumpsters and trucks and those sorts of things. So if we limit the amount of retail, obviously, if you've got 500 square feet of retail, you're not going to have trucks coming in and large dumpsters and those sorts of things. I don't think that's her intent anyway. But ultimately, she may sell this and move on to something bigger and better.
Other questions? Councilman Eigelhart.
I think we all agree that we want to try and help you out whatever we can, but I have some of the same concerns that it's one thing on Canton when you've moved in and you know the situation's there. It's another when something that gets added that the restaurant could come next door on Canton Street. But these people who all live around this now didn't know that until now. So that's my one concern. You don't want to put a restaurant in, so that's really not the issue for you. But same thing as Mr. Dippolito said, that the next thing that could happen. And of course, we hope people stay there for a long, long time. It won't even be an issue. And I think we all agree pretty much that we'd add Canton Street into the whole historic district down the line. Some people might disagree when they say, "Oh, we have to go through HPC on whatever it has to be from now on." That might stop that, but I think there are benefits that everybody would agree to. So I guess I don't know if Mr. Davidson, Mr. Townsend, or Mr. Strickland, since he's not here tonight, but are there ways that we can parse that down to where it makes sense, where it's not onerous, but that it makes sense for the current situation?
Question. Clyde, I guess we're looking for Brad. I'm confused tonight. Brad Townsend. Let me recognize Councilman Orleans, but I want you to be thinking about some language which would satisfy the council's wishes. Councilman Orleans.
I want to help out here, but we need to proceed with caution because this is spot zoning basically, and as Councilman Eichhardt was saying, people in the historic area, they've known for years what could be next door to them if they're moving in residential. And that's why the point of getting all the citizens on Woodstock involved in this so they know what's going on and we can discuss it, that's the best way to take it. So I'd like to see us proceed with some caution here on what we open up to do, including potential retail, because you give it away and you never know what's going to happen there. Also, if I remember correctly, Brad, because this is condition C2 salon, my understanding is it cannot be used for office either. So maybe that's another, I think Mr. Dippolito was mentioning earlier, the possibility of office situation as well. So that's an area to look at too. So anyway.
Thank you.
Maybe you and Clyde, Brad, you and Brad might want to talk about some acceptable language. I'm on a rut here. I can't get my mind straight.
It seems one of the major concerns, at least discussed this evening, was the use of a restaurant. I mean, she has never intended it to be used as a restaurant. Maybe that's included. As part of one of the uses that's excluded.
I'm suggesting perhaps we look at office and no more than certain percentage of the square footage occupied by retail, because that's what I'm hearing from Rich and Jerry.
That would be a reasonable limitation.
Rich, have you got something in mind?
As far as enforceability, is there a way to craft that so that it is somewhat enforceable? Would it be best to make it an absolute square footage?
I think
Mr. Davidson?
I think that's going to be difficult if she's going to have little setups throughout the place to actually have a square footage.
Probably the simplest way is to have a number not to exceed. That way, I mean, if we're looking at a total structure that's 1,600 square feet, if we're looking at a third of that being 500, not to exceed 500 of a use. I mean, that's enforceable because we look at business licenses every day, particular locations, and we check the conditions as to them being compliant or non-compliant.
So do you have some recommended language?
I think I have some, Mr. Mayor. I'm ready for a motion if...
Yes, sir. We'll entertain a motion.
Okay. I will move to approve RZ 09-09. thought I was ready for a motion. To not include staff's condition number 1, but to include C2 limited to the use as a hair salon and for the sale of retail merchandise not to exceed 400 square feet and for the use as office professional. And I would like to add a second condition that the applicant comply with the original zoning conditions of adding a brick sidewalk.
Is that if she puts that use in?
Well, she ought to comply already because it was 10 years ago.
Right. I don't know if that's. Are you saying that, I'm not sure it's appropriate tonight to make a decision from the dais that whether she's in compliance or not, but if you're passing a zoning, is it the use is conditioned upon her compliance?
I'm okay with that, yes.
Isn't the condition already there?
Well, if the condition is already there, but I think what we're really saying is if the condition isn't in there, I don't think it's appropriate to sit up here and make that decision. But I think you can say in making a motion going forward that if she wants to have retail or office, you've sort of repeated the condition. If the condition's already there, it's irrelevant what we're talking about. But I'm not sure we can go back and make a decision here from the table that you've got to do something whether or not whether it currently exists.
Well, you're changing the zoning and adding a new condition, so I would, if you want that condition in there, I would put it in there now.
Oh, I think it should be in there, but so if she accepts this, how much time does she have to comply? Because if she's currently not in compliance, I think she needs the time to go into compliance, whether or not she goes forward with retail or not. Well, she needs to understand this.
It would be a condition of getting the extra uses, so she wouldn't have the extra uses until she put in the brick sidewalk.
And that's what I was suggesting. That the extra, it is what it is, but if she wants those extra uses, that's on top of that. She's got to put in that brick sidewalk twice. Only once, actually. Okay, so Mr. DiPolito, as I understand your motion is that she's to have the additional uses of the office professional and the limited retail on the condition that at the same time those uses come in, she puts in the sidewalk. If she currently has a condition to put in the sidewalk, that doesn't erase it. This just says it twice.
Yes, I know the use was limited to 400 square feet.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion? Councilman Orland.
Can we hear the total motion together one last time here?
I'm not going to do it. Mr. DiPolito, are you comfortable in reading the motion again with all those, with the condition and the uses?
Yes, I move to approve RZ 09-09 as C2, limited to the use of a hair salon, the use of office professional, and the sale of retail merchandise not to exceed 400 square feet. As a condition of the zoning, the applicant will provide a brick sidewalk along the frontage.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Councilman Eichelhard.
Technical question. By definition, it seems like it is C2 conditional as opposed to C2. Or does that make an issue if we have it on the zoning map now as C2, even though these conditions are specific? Does that cause us any problem in the future? Okay.
We have a motion and a second to approve this rezoning with conditions. Is anyone in the audience who have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. For the record, Councilman Henry is absent with an excuse tonight. I apologize for not announcing that earlier. I would recommend to Ms. Taylor that in talking with your neighbors, if you wish to avoid all of this in the future. If your neighborhood would like to come into the historic district as a group, that would be a simple solution. And then you would have all the uses and all of the conditions, the benefits and the burdens of the historic district, and you would know exactly what you were and what you could do, and you wouldn't have to go through all of this. And I presume that if your neighborhood wants to come in as a block and it's contiguous with the historic district, this council would look upon that favorably. Thank you. Councilman Member DiPolito, if you'll call the next agenda item.
The next item is PV 09-02, 11575 King Road, Maryland, Lancat. I apologize for butchering that. Sutton Country Day School Limited. Mr. Townsend.
Yes. This is an application in Parkway Village. This application is asking for 2 variances. It is an existing day school adjacent to the shopping center, adjacent to the Roswell High School property, across the street from the Publix shopping center. There are 2 requested variances dealing with the streetscape as the day school exists, as well as the maximum number of parking spaces allowed from 29 to 43 to allow for the marketability for an office use. As you can see from the daycare, the existing parking is in front. The proposed application, that's the site plan of the existing daycare showing the playground to the rear of the property. This is the proposed site plan, which includes a driveway access along the southern property line and additional parking to the rear of the property. This property, when it was originally proposed back in 88 for a daycare center, went through a rezoning from E2 to R2 for that designation. Subsequent to that, there was the Parkway Village overlay placed on top of it. The business of the daycare center has been non-existing for over 3 months, so that kind of leaves them unable to go back into the daycare center business. It has been marketed a couple of different ways in trying to provide a different use into the property. So the applicant is requesting the 2 variances. The surrounding properties are in the Parkway Village, the high school to the north. This proposal is being recommended for approval with the application, the site plan that's being received and reviewed for you this evening, which was received on September 30th. The application does require 2 variances for that use, dealing with the parking and the number of the streetscape along King Road. Staff would recommend approval of the small tract status for this application.
Does the council have any questions? Brad. Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've noticed on environmental comments that there was 2 recommendations from our Public Works Environmental Department. Are we adding those as conditions of zoning?
Yes.
And the applicant is aware of those recommendations and have no problems with them?
I don't believe so.
I'd like to check on that, please, when you can. Thank you.
Councilmember Orleans.
Brad, I was trying to think, have we ever given a variance to the 40-foot Parkway Village streetscape? I don't think we've ever done
Not that I know of, no.
So it's been required on everything in Parkway Village, correct?
Right.
Thank you.
Councilmember Orleans, when this was first brought to my attention, I shared your concern, but given that this is not a new construction, that the variance in essence is already in effect, the parking lot is already within the 40-foot buffer, and I'm a great defender of the Parkway Village and the 40-foot buffer, but given that this property is already developed and already has the parking place within that buffer, I would hope the council would consider that in making this variance.
Well, I mean, you're also asking for additional parking, so I guess I thought they were already looking at redoing the parking. So I was waiting to see, and it's not being used as daycare anymore, so I was just waiting to hear from the applicant to see what their thoughts were on all of these issues. But yeah, it's a concern I have, because that's one of the main points of Parkwood Village, as you well know, so I'm just waiting to hear.
Yes, sir. Other questions of Brad Townsend? Thank you. At this time, we'll hear from the applicant.
I'm Brad Riffle with AEC 50 Warm Springs Circle. To answer Ms. Wynn's question, I'm not aware of any of the conditions. We weren't sent anything, so I would like a chance to review.
Could we do this? Do we have another hearing? If we could continue this until later in the meeting, so you'll have a chance to review that. And could we move on to the next item? Well, let's take up the simple things and come back to this one. Mr. DiPolito, if you could read the next agenda item.
The next item is RZ 09-10, a text amendment regarding pawn shops and check cashing establishments within the city. This is the first reading. Mr. Townsend.
If we'll have Mr. Davidson read that, then Mr. Townsend can address it.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Roswell zoning ordinance regarding pawn shops and check cashing establishments within the City of Roswell. Now, therefore, pursuant to their authority, the Mayor and Council adopt the following ordinance. Article 3 of the City of Roswell zoning ordinance, Section 3.1 definitions, is amended by adding new definitions to read as follows and deleting the existing definition of pawnbroker, the text of which is incorporated herein by reference. The zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell is further amended by adding as permitted uses to Table 6.1 pawn shops and check cashing establishments to read as follows, text again of which is incorporated herein by reference. And the zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell is further amended by adding a new Chapter 10.40 pawn shops and check cashing establishments to Article 10 specific use requirements to read as follows, text again of which is incorporated herein by reference. And if approved, this will be the first reading of the ordinance.
Mr. Townsend, could you explain to us how we're changing our current law and what this effect of this text amendment will have?
We are amending our current zoning ordinance to add 4 definitions: the definition of check cashing establishment, the definition of pawn, the definition of pawn broker, and the definition of pawn shop. We are removing the current definition of pawn broker because the one we are proposing more aligns with the current state requirement in the state definition. We are including as a permitted use in the C3 zoning district pawn shops and check cashing establishments as a permitted use if they comply with the proposed restriction of being not located within 5,000 feet of another pawn shop or check cashing establishment. This proposed map shows the existing location of the pawn shops and check cashing establishments. The red line is a 5,000-foot buffer line, so any new establishments would have to be out of that 5,000-foot location from the existing spots.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Mr. Townsend, just a clarification. These uses are already allowed in C3, is that correct? So we're not adding them as a use, we're actually restricting them.
Right. We have permitted them in the past just as retail establishments. Now we are clearly defining them and indicating that they are located and permitted in C3.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make clear and clarify that we're also including under pawn shops, that's the title max or the, those.
Any title.
Any titles that can be used for collateral or for exchange for that is also in here. So I just want to let everybody know that we are including that.
Yes, we are including that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the first reading of RZ 09-10.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito for approval. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Are we ready to return to the previous agenda item?
That's playground. It's there. Okay. It seems as if one of the conditions, well, number one, the porous pavement we're okay with. We were already planning to accommodate that as our site plan indicates. The second one that indicates about the rain garden to the north of the building, that's a portion of the playground, and that area is being considered for the 150 square foot per child in this layout. One of the reasons that we, obviously, the first request for the 40-foot landscape strip is quite obvious. The second one with the number of parking is due to a greater marketability. When this building became vacant and it was on the market, the many daycare operators were saying we simply can't operate with so few parking spaces. So we decided to try to put as many as we could that would accommodate the daycares into the back. Obviously the drive going to the back. Knowing that we needed to accommodate so many square feet per child and maximizing the number of square foot that we could get so they can get as many children outside at one time. I do have the owners here, and I do have the potential future operators of a daycare. So they are asking that if we could at least get them 13 spaces to the back, which obviously that fits in this layout. One of the reasons, again, for the additional parking spaces up to 43 is so that they can possibly market to a doctor or a dental use. While we were going through the process, there were a few candidates that looked at the building in terms of potentially being doctor or dental users. Thus the reason for the additional parking spaces that you see. I'm not sure that we can accommodate the condition with regards to the rain garden because that is playground area and designated as playground area.
For my benefit, could you explain to me what a rain garden is?
It's a method to accomplish water quality from the runoff of either the building or the parking. It's a depressed area with plant material. It's just a way to convey stormwater and cleanse the stormwater. It's most of the time it's attached to downspouts from buildings.
Have y'all considered pervious parking to the rear as a compromise?
Yeah, we have porous.
This is porous parking.
Yes, sir.
Pavement.
Yes, sir. We can't do the drive to the dumpster in porous because it's brittle in nature. So we have to use standard asphalt. The remaining portion of the parking lot in the back will be of porous paver. Will either be a paver system or actual porous concrete.
Thank you. Other questions? Does the council want to hear? Yes, Councilmember DiPolito.
I had a couple of questions. First of all, where is the stormwater currently detained?
It's in the front corner. It's the southwest corner. If you'll see some those large dashed lines that go across the street in that southwestern corner.
Okay.
There's a small. Sir?
It's just not labeled right now?
That's correct. It's here we go. Right here.
Okay. So there's no water quality facility currently?
No. Since this building was built in '89, there was no requirements for that.
Okay, so I guess my understanding then is the attempt to have the rain garden is attempt to have some water quality. Is that?
We intend to fully comply with all the requirements for detention and water quality. I'm not sure that we can accommodate it in a rain garden. The very fact of doing a lot of it in porous pavement will accommodate some of that, and then we'll have to find some other means in which to take care of the drive that goes around the side.
Okay. And this is really a question for staff. I hadn't seen this request for a rain garden previously, so I was wondering what the intent was there. Did you speak with the environmental folks concerning that?
I can kind of answer that. The idea is good. However, since that's a playground, it wouldn't go very well as that application with the playground.
How much of an area do you need for that?
I don't know. It depends on the contributing pervious area. They could be quite small, or they can have decent size, just depending on the contributing area.
Since our staff felt that was important, is it possible to relocate it somewhere else on the property?
It's possible. Knowing what the current potential operators are looking for in terms of what their needs are for parking, they're looking to do the back 13 spaces. That's the current plan. So, in essence, we would be removing this bay of 11 and that bay of 4. Therefore, we could increase the footprint of the playground, but then we could probably keep a space in between the fence of the playground and the curb that establishes that drive to those spaces. So it's quite possible that we could provide some very linear form of a rain garden. I would think more of a bioretention area as opposed to a rain garden. That would be more applicable as a bioretention area.
Okay. And my last question is probably a question for the applicant. Is this going to be a school or a medical office? We've heard both.
Well, it's currently set up as a daycare, and they have a letter of intent from the operators to be a daycare.
Okay.
However, there were others that were looking at it for medical or dental uses, so we wanted to make sure that we could accommodate that and the marketability standpoint as well.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? Councilman Orleans.
That was a question I was going to have, is if you were trying to go towards a daycare or you were trying to go towards a medical office building. But adding 28 parking spaces, and I'm going back to the streetscape for Parkway Village, and I see where you've got the 40-foot streetscape setback, comes in the middle of the driveway that goes around the edge. What is the distance to the front of the front 5 parking spaces? If you came up to the curb of the driveway that goes around the south side, I believe, I don't know what that distance is, but can it accommodate the removal of the 5 parking spaces and putting in a shorter but still a Parkway Village streetscape?
Well, that distance, if you will, that's a front. That space right here, the current landscape strip, is about 10 feet, and then of course the parking space is about 20 feet. So in essence, 30 feet would be to this line right here.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I was talking about today.
Right. I'm sure it could be accommodated, but what that does is it shifts those 5 spaces to the back, and then we'd have to lessen or probably do maybe these 4 and some over here, or maybe 5 along here. I mean, it'd have to be reconfigured in some manner.
But I guess I was thinking you were adding so many parking spaces, I mean, that you may not need all new 28 spaces.
Again, it's the trying to get close to a medical dental ratio of parking that the industry is desiring.
So that's not for the daycare, but that's for the medical dental.
That's correct. In case the daycare operation doesn't succeed, then they have the ability to market it to the medical industry or dental industry.
And I understand that, but this is setting and I understand it's an existing place, but it's setting a major precedent for the whole Parkway Village area, and that's where my concern is coming from. So I'm just trying to look for some kind of a compromise to work with it here.
Well, this is the boundary of the district, so the delineation line is right there next to the school.
Well, since you're trying to design this to cover daycare, medical office, I'm thinking you need the playground if it's going to be a daycare, and you need a few less parking spaces. And if you need a dental office, medical thing, you need more parking spaces, but you wouldn't need the playground. So if you eliminated the 5 in the front and you've got a contract for potential daycare, then you may not need you'd have enough spaces with 23 additional to cover that, I'm assuming. And then if it ends up going to medical dental in the future, I would think you wouldn't need the playground, you'd carve out those 5 spaces in that area. That just kind of logic hitting me off the top of my head here with my cohort next to me.
Other questions or comments? Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
Yes. I would like to move to approve PV 09-02 with the conditions that the porous concrete shall be replaced with porous asphalt or pavers. Second condition, to add a rain garden where appropriate to accommodate flow from the roof of the building. The rain garden can be another structure as approved by the environmental department. The property shall be developed in accordance with the site plan stamped received September 30th, 2009, City of Roswell Community Development Department, with the exception of the removal of the 5 spaces, the existing 5 spaces on the front of the property. Should I include variances as part of my motion, or do I do those separately? Mr. Davidson, include them? And then with the following variances. To reduce the required 40-foot streetscape as required by Section 12.2.3A to 30 feet. And the second variance is to vary the maximum number of parking spaces allowed by Section 12.2.3C from 29 to 43. That is my motion.
Does the applicant have any questions regarding that motion?
Yes, one of the current owners has brought up the point that the functionality of the daycare is such that the front spaces are highly coveted, of course, due to the pickup and drop off of kids in the front door. Therefore, burdening more parents, I guess, and sending them all the way to the back and then having to deal with a rather long, circuitous walk to the front door. So just making the functionality of drop off and pickup a little bit more difficult by virtue of eliminating the spaces.
Is there not
a motion? Any other comments you'd like to make? Zippolito, does your motion stand?
Is there not still 8 spaces in the front for that purpose?
There are, but you never know at one time how many,
I'd just like to make a clarification related to the variances. The way the applicant was brought in, the variance was from the 29 spaces to the 43. With the elimination of the 5 in front, that number should go to 38.
Well, the intent was to follow Mr. Orland's lead that they could reconfigure the parking lot to
In the back.
get the additional spaces in the rear.
Okay. If that's the clarification, that's fine. Okay.
We have a motion. Any other comments the applicant would like to make before here a second? We've heard your comments.
I'm sorry, the 38 was dealing with just...
If you have the daycare.
Okay. Yes, this is Mr. Weincat. He'd like to speak.
I am the owner along with my wife, and I was in the child care business for 10 years.
Name for the records.
Alan Weincat. The issue is that the safety of children might well be compromised. The drop-off in the morning and the pickup in the evening generally is within a 1-hour period. So we have as many as 140 parents come in and out. If we made them go behind the center and walk up the driveway, we've added a huge safety issue that I think is somewhat fearful for an operator.
Does the council have any questions about that comment? Thank you, sir. Mr. DiPolito, does your motion stand?
Well, based on our discussion, I'm beginning to think we may want to defer this for further study. Would that be acceptable to the applicant?
We live in Jacksonville, Florida. If it's the right thing to do, it would be acceptable, but it is somewhat of a hardship.
As far as those 5 spaces, you were referring to having to have a lot of children having to walk down this asphalt, but there's only 15 spaces in the front right now anyway, so we're only eliminating 5 cars, so there still would be a significant number of cars in the back. So wouldn't you accommodate a back entrance into the daycare?
In terms of security in daycare, where we've got to, both for safety and by law, check children in and out, and make sure that a authorized person picks up the child, that would become a horrendous problem for an operator.
But based on even what's there now, those additional 5 spaces, and you're talking about 140 parents, you're still going to have people parking in the back, are you not?
Well, we envision employee parking being most of the back use.
But I mean, that many parents, won't you still have some that'll overload to the back and walk up and back and forth?
At 15, I think we're about the right number, because a pickup is a child being picked up from a room by a parent, walked to the front, signed out, and then going to the car and leaving. But that happens in bunches based on commute time to and from work.
It seems to me that the flow of this is not working well based on the discussion, and personally I'd like to see the applicant go back and take another look at the site plan and see if there's a way to get it to function better, to address the concerns that this council has expressed, and potentially get the layout to work better from a daycare standpoint. Possibly, have you looked at running a drive around the building to provide better access, something to that extent.
I too was concerned about circulation. Granted, this is only a 1 acre site, so it's very tight. And given we have to accommodate 150 square foot per child, we tried to maximize the amount of playground. The playground that's out there right now is huge. Obviously, going around the building with another drive, these two are very, very nice oaks right here. We'd have to take those out, and then of course we'd probably lose 3 spaces up front by virtue of the drive coming around to the side and going to those spaces there. So I have considered it. I'm not sure if it can be accommodated without a lot of tree removal and front parking spaces, 3 more.
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now I can understand Councilman Orland's concerns about the 40-foot landscape strip, and one thing that this council has always done, even the ones before me, has always made sure that what we do is going to be aesthetically pleasing and something that that we can really be proud of, and I think that's one of them. And I do not like, to do anything that can hinder taking that 40-foot landscape strip down, because I think that's really what the Parkway Village was all about. And I would have a hard time not voting for what Councilman DiPolito has already put in a motion. So I'm very kind of torn about this, but I can see where Councilman Orleans is coming from. So I would entertain the motion to defer this and see if there's some way that we can work this out. Because my concern is I'm hearing daycare and dental or medical office. If we was in here with medical office, those 5 spaces wouldn't mean anything, because people would be parking in the back, walking down, going in. So I'm still concerned. I don't know who's getting what here. And so I would right now, tonight, if I was taking a vote, I would vote for Councilman DiPolito's motion. So it might be to your advantage to think of a deferral and see if you can work this out.
And if you fit it for one purpose, I think it would be easy, but trying to make it a small lot, trying to get flexibility for 2 different uses, and trying to accommodate both of them is what's giving you a hard time here. So if you could pick one or the other, I think you could get to a solution, but when you try to pick them both, I appreciate the need for flexibility, but I think that's the problem this council's having, is trying to fit 2 things on one piece of property and accommodate 2 different uses with different parking places with a very limited amount of space.
This is Mr. Hyman. He's the potential operator of the future daycare.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening. I'm David Heineman. My wife and I are the hopeful owners of the
we're hoping to
of the daycare. Let me put your minds at ease from the standpoint of what we're wanting to use the property for. We're definitely wanting to put in a daycare. The use of the spaces for us would be, again, it can be licensed for 140 kids. So you need all front spaces for the pick-up and drop-off. Bright from the Start is the organization in Georgia that licensed daycares. They want license anything where kids are running or having to be moved up and down a drive. The spaces that we're needing to have in the back would be used just for staff. 13. It takes right at 13 people to run a daycare of that size. So there would be 13 employees plus my wife.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
If we were just making this a daycare center and not trying to accommodate additional parking spaces for a potential medical office, how many of these parking places to the rear could we eliminate?
Well, we have to have 13 in the back. And I can explain.
Do we have 13, or how many do we have in the back?
Well, there are more than that currently in the drawing. My wife and I came into this after.
I'm just looking for a solution here. So maybe if we eliminated some parking places to the rear, and made this thing, and maybe the council would accept that. I'm just looking for a solution. Because the council is saying, well, let's pick one or the other. So if we just picked a daycare, what could we change in the site plan to make council more amenable to accepting this thing with the parking places in front?
Well, Mr. Hyman they're wanting these back 13 spaces, but they're also saying that as a daycare, these 5 spaces are highly coveted.
And I don't know what council is going to accept, but I'm looking for what might be another alternative that would not be a deferral, that would get a resolution tonight. Right now, how many spaces do we have in the rear?
28.
28. What if we went with 15 spaces to the rear? Would that make a difference?
We could accept 20.
20. Would that make a difference to council? Nope. Well, I tried.
Well, I'm only one of 4 sitting up here, sir.
Brad, why don't we look at a deferral, and you can look at it from a safety standpoint versus what we're trying to do with staff, and see if there's some alternatives to this. Because otherwise we're going to be sitting here trying to see what works off the fly.
Let me make another proposal to try to move this thing along. What if we had eliminated 3 parking places on the front, those to the south, and left the 2 on the front, so instead of losing 5 spaces, you'd lose 3. Is that a compromise folks could live with?
From our viewpoint, that is a compromise that we can work with. How many spaces in back with it?
The same site plan, instead of eliminating 5 parking spaces, could council accept eliminating the 3 parking spaces to the south of the driveway as a compromise? Councilmember Wynn.
Mr. Mayor, my understanding, and then I'll let Councilman Orleans make sure that I'm correct on this, and Councilman DiPolito, the reason that the motion was made to eliminate all 5 was to take the landscape strip from 40 feet to 30 feet and at least have some type of a landscape strip there. And if we take out the 3 to the south and leave the 2 to the north, we're still going to have some type of variance for the landscape strip in that area.
Well, I am a staunch defender of the Parkway Village District and the 40-foot green belt along that stretch. But in this case, we're starting off with a existing 10-foot green belt, and I see that we're expanding it to 30 feet. We've got a lot of empty stores. We've got a lot of businesses that are hurting in Roswell, and I would love to see us fill some empty spaces. And I'm just looking for possible compromises that the council could accept.
I appreciate that, but I'd like to hear from the 2
Mr. Davidson.
colleagues.
Going back to the question of trying to look long-term with precedent setting in a Parkway Village, and we've never broken that before. Do you have any thoughts on this whole situation and going up to the 3 spaces that possibly could work? But what are we doing for down the road?
Because these spaces already exist and this use has been there previously, I don't think it would set any kind of precedent to allow them to stay or to get rid of 3. I don't think it sets a precedent anywhere in the Parkway Village. Just as a very different circumstance than normally exists in the Parkway Village. The 40-foot is required in most Parkway Villages along 92. This is, off King Road, so you have a little bit of a difference there also. But I mean, there's reasons you could do it. I don't know if you want to. I'm just saying there's a reason you could.
Well, I too want to try to help you as much as we can, and trying to think of both sides of this and how we can protect ourselves as well. So if you can
If I
go
can,
without the 3 spaces, and we can use that to fulfill it to the driveway coming from the shopping center on the corner,
Right.
that brings that streetscape straight up, and then it doesn't jump over to the other 2.
Sure. Let me ask one question here. One of the reasons that my wife and I had really needed the other spaces up front as well. A lot of daycare business is built on after school and before school pickup and drop off, and we would have you've probably seen the small daycare buses running around. The drop off for those children would be in the front, so you would really need the extra room there if you can have it to kind of maneuver those things around. So
let's make sure we know where we're going. Can you live with the elimination of 3 spaces rather than 5? Those 3 right there.
I'll be honest, that one right there kind of makes me think, because now it was for 3 parents to park in there because it was easy to get in and out. Now it's for the bus to come in and out, so that means parents can't park in there. So honestly, I have a little concern about what the justifications are here.
spaces are you guys willing to go down to in the back?
May I speak?
Yes, please.
My name is Helene Heinman. I'm the potential daycare owner. If you will look at the actual drawing, where they put the drive-in, thank you, where they put the drive-in, they will be taking out 2 parking spaces right there. Just 1? Okay. So you're already losing 1, plus 2 of them are handicap spaces. So you're down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 spaces up front. Does that count the 3? So you remove the 3, you're down to 9. And you have 140 parents, 140 kids in this daycare that parents are going to need to come in and pick up. And like my husband said, if you put a drive around the building, you're then causing kids to have to cross the road, and Bright from the start does not approve on that. Thank you.
Mr. DiPolito, where do we go from here?
Well, it doesn't seem like we can come to an agreement, and I always hate for applicants to try to do this stuff on the fly, because I think it does a disservice to them. I think it also makes it very difficult for staff to try to understand what we've accomplished here. So I would move for deferral.
Motion for deferral by Councilmember DiPolito. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans.
November 9th.
Till November 9th. Motion to defer until November 9th. Will the applicant be available to come back on November 9th? We need to hear from the applicant. If they're available to come back on November 9th, we could defer it longer than that. Thank you. We'll wait till you check that.
Pardon me, I'm sorry, I was getting a date. My wife, who is the owner, Marilyn Wancat, can attend. I am teaching a school that week and cannot attend.
She's prettier than you are. I think she'll
Thank
be
you.
fine.
I acknowledge that.
Yeah. We, from our point of view, and just, I'm sure you're aware of that, but we operated this or had it leased for 18 years, and we were unaware that the zoning was taken away from us, and so we're here with nowhere to go as far as daycare, and it's all set up for daycare. All we're asking for is a few parking places in the back. That's all. And we've been working on the the playground area, per child, square foot. We've been working on this since last January. And it's just really, I just want to let you know that we try to do everything we can to comply with everything. The playground will take care of a lot of the drainage and the water runoff. So Thank you very
We
much.
appreciate all your effort.
Thank you.
Councilman DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for staff. This was being brought in as small tract status, so it could be used as medical office. But if it is a daycare, it currently exists as a daycare, does it even need to be rezoned, or do they just have a site plan change? They wouldn't have to be small tract. They could come in for a site plan change under R2.
This is a non-conforming.
It's a non-conforming use. Got it. All right. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Motion for deferral. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll hear from our city administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is approval to sign the necessary documents to request a 120-day Fulton County service delivery extension and approval of a mediator. We have been working on negotiations with Fulton County for our service delivery strategy agreement since the beginning of the year. All 11 cities and the county are still not in agreement, and our deadline is looming close in October the 31st. We still have several outstanding issues. The largest two are water and wastewater, followed by elections and roads. All the cities in the county have agreed to proceed with voluntary mediation. However, we need to request a 120-day extension with the hope that the Department of Community Affairs would grant that, and thereby we can get in front of a judge to continue our local government status. On October 31st, when the service delivery strategy has not been negotiated, we will no longer be eligible for any state funding, any stimulus money, or any permitting from the state of Georgia, according to the ruling from DCA. So it's incumbent upon us to move forward with an extension, get in front of a judge so that he can provide that for us. The cities and the counties have tentatively agreed on Judge Norman Fletcher to hear the mediation. Mr. Davidson can provide a lot of the detail about Judge Fletcher's credentials. We all will be sharing in the cost of the mediation. We have a meeting set up for the 14th of October this week to begin those discussions, and I will have an update about potential costs for it at this time. I do not have an estimated cost of mediation, but it will be a requirement. Yes, sir. To sign the document to request the extension.
Approve.
Motion by Councilmember Eichelhardt. We have a second. Second by Councilmember Wynn. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you.
Return. We have closure. Motion for closure.
Motion.
Motion by Councilmember Wynn. We have a second. Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. All in favor, raise your hand.